No shortage of fantasy MLR excitement coming out of Major League Rugby's round 2, and I think one of our hosts has finally been brought back down to earth after his confidence shot up sky high following his opening week's matchup performance. Your weekly fantasy MLR breakdown, waiver wire update, and round 3 preview coming up. The Fantasy Ruckers show starts right now.
Where rugby and the world of fantasy sports collide. Welcome to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, talking all things rugby from the MLR to leagues around the world. We're on top of it. Headphones on, pads off. This is the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Now, here are your hosts, Ryan Yee, Matt Yee, and Devin Vanderpool.
What's up, everybody? This is episode number 55 of the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Thank you so much to our Fantasy Ruckers League members, our community members, and everyone else tagging along on this journey of trying to make fantasy rugby a reality in the MLR. I'm Ryan Yee, and of course, with me every single week, Matt Yee. But hey, Vandy back in the house. Vandy.
Thanks, boys.
What's up, dude? Hey, welcome
you.
back. I know you've got to enjoy the first 2 rounds of the fantasy MLR season.
Well, enjoys and all.
Yeah, I was gonna say enjoy.
It is good to have you back on the show, man. It's been quite some time, dude. And we love having you on every single time. So no, we're excited to have you. How has the fantasy? I know you alluded to it a little bit there, but how has the fantasy MLR season been for you so far, and how have you been since the last time you've been on this show?
I'll answer the second part first. Yeah, I've been pretty good, busy. Other than that, no, the fantasy it's been a time. I mean, I'd like the boys to do a little bit better, but I can say the same.
Vanny,
I can say the same about myself. So,
hey, Vanny, look, there's no place like home, and you're right at home, sitting there in second last, eh?
I can't.
That is funny. And hey, you're right back at home here on the Fantasy Ruckers Show too. So we'd love to have you back here. And perfect episode to have you back on too, because obviously we are in full swing with this fantasy MLR season, just wrapping up round 2. And to say that it's getting more and more exciting is, I think, an understatement with the great performances and matches that we've seen. Some of the players that are emerging, some of the players that are not emerging too. It's been no shortage of storylines in this fantasy MLR campaign for 2023, and a hunt for all of you guys hunting for this Fantasy Ruckers Championship jersey behind me. So obviously we're going to have a jam-packed episode in this one as well. Obviously we're going to do the round 2 fantasy breakdown. We got a league update with where the Fantasy Ruckers League is at right now. Obviously we got some waiver wire pickups that we're going to talk about, and maybe even have a discussion about kind of the considerations that league managers now need to make with some of these big names really having I guess a shocking start to the season in terms of when they are appearing, and the differences of the expectation heading into the season versus what we've seen after 2 matches of this MLR year. And of course we'll break down a round 3 preview and keep that prediction segment going. Vandy, I know that you missed out on the first 2 prediction segments, but hey, we'll keep you in on this too, and maybe we'll go by winning percentage or something in terms of figuring out at the end of the year who's going to be winning this prediction contest here on the Fantasy Ruckers Show. But yeah, super exciting stuff. We'll get to all of that, but obviously first got to do some housekeeping stuff. If you aren't following already, at the Fantasy Ruckers, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, you want to find us there. Been having a whole lot of fun with all the content that's been coming out, people interacting with us. It's been super great. Obviously it sounds like Fantasy MLR is really picking up, and people are starting to hear about not just Fantasy MLR but the Fantasy Ruckers Show. So we appreciate the support. We appreciate the people that have been there with us since day one. And hey, if that's not enough for you, we also have a Discord channel down below that you can join, where there's been a lot of conversation about the MLR, about fantasy MLR, even more rugby that's happening with Six Nations going, Super Rugby going. It's been super fun stuff. So we want to keep it, see it growing. And again, our goal here is to continue to make it a reality for everyone. That is Fantasy MLR, and that's where you're going to hear about that first. And we're continuing to work hard to get that open to everyone. That's where we'll make that announcement. So if that's something that you're interested in, that'll be another good reason for you to give us a follow there as well. And while you're at it, if you enjoy these episodes, make sure you subscribe as well on YouTube. It really helps us out as well. But I want to start off at the top of the show. We're going to get into Commissioner Yee's update shortly and give you an update of the Fantasy Ruckers League. But since I have both these guys here, I gotta throw in this sad music here because last episode we were so high. Matt was so happy with their performance. He came out with opening the first week with the second highest point total of the year. Vandy having a little rough time, but it didn't take long for Matt Yee to join right where he belonged with Vandy there, with a little bit of a rough week now with a loss. But
welcome home, buddy. Hey, welcome home.
I had to make a decision between whether playing the sad music or giving you guys a moment of silence, but a little bit of a rough,
I'd like a moment of silence,
for you.
please. I'd like a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Nope. Stop it. Yep. Nope. Thank you.
So
I'd like a moment, Ryan.
All right, we're gonna take a moment of silence.
Moment of silence.
Moment of silence.
Except me, I'm gonna say a few things
for the morning. All right, say a few things, man.
Okay. The Rucking Goat. We have him in our thoughts as he's turned into the Rucking Woat. Worst of all time.
Amen.
Ruck and roll. Even though he's got one loss, he's still gonna thrive and get that chance.
Amen. All right, no, that's a good illusion, but that's pretty funny. I mean, it was a rough round 2 there for you guys, but again, we're gonna break that down here. Before we get into it, let's start off with some news and notes before we start really getting into the nitty gritty of the fantasy MLR round 2 breakdown. A big announcement, guys. George Killebrew, commissioner of the MLR, I should now say former commissioner of the MLR, is stepping down. The man that has been there, I believe, since day one, or serving the role since 2019, been an instrumental part of growing this league. And I think something that needs to be commended for him is the way that he was handled a whole bunch of very difficult situations with the MLR. Matt, let me say, COVID was a big one. Got through that. I mean, there were a whole bunch of leagues that folded during that time. Yep. George Killebrew was able to get them through. We talked about the XFL. They folded during COVID. MLR did not. And obviously,
they're back now, though.
Back up and going. I get that, but the MLR has been there the whole time. And then I also want to mention, obviously, the whole Gilchrist situation. I think after the communication that was a little bit questionable, I think at the end of the day, looking at it back in hindsight, it could have been a lot worse and ended this league in a completely different fashion. So I think the way that George Killebrew was able to handle that, in addition to COVID and helping grow this, has been a big part of it.
And Ryan, let's not forget what Callie told us, that he has one of the firmest left-hand handshakes out of anybody around town.
He did mention that. Callie did mention that when we did interview him after that draft. So it was interesting to get that insight as well. And it's going to be Nick Benson that will be coming up to replace this role. Former deputy commissioner. He'll be named the CEO ahead of the 2023 season. I'm not too sure what the difference is between being the CEO versus being the commissioner. I don't know if it's just a different title. It's kind of interesting there.
Hey, Vandy, he's a former Utah Warrior COO.
Exactly. This is a guy that's been involved in the MLR for quite some time. Yeah, you mentioned it, COO of the Utah Warriors. So we'll see what Nick Benson is able to do in this next kind of wave of the MLR and taking the next steps in growing the league. I guess quick question for you guys with this. Not so much your opinions on George Killebrew or necessarily Nick Benson, because I think that is yet to be seen. But for you guys, in terms of next steps or changes for the MLR, what are you guys really hoping to see with the new leader coming in and changes that possibly could be implemented that are up there for you guys?
I'm going to say the retirement of the 20-minute water break.
I agree. That's fair enough. Vandy, what about you, man?
I don't know. I'd like to see, like, during the games, a little bit more, how do I put this? Like a flash for the players. Like when they do something cool, like highlight the player, show them in the spotlight or something, let them do like some sick rugby move, and then show the try they got. You know what I mean? You know, when they're the standalone and the spotlight's on them and they flick the ball or something, and it's like, yo, Andrew Cole with the latest try, and it's him flipping the ball, and then it shows how he's been. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I will say, though, the production, I think, has improved vastly with the start of this season. I mean, we have the addition of the TMO and the mic'd up refs. I think that has provided a lot of quality there for the leagues. I think especially for newer.
I love mic'd up refs, man. I think
and I think great. I also
think, except when the mic doesn't match the words that's coming out of their mouth. It's like 5-second delay.
I mean, that's me half the time on this podcast. So,
And then I will say, I think that it has a huge impact in terms of teaching the new rugby fan as well. When they can kind of learn that process and all the rules and things, I think that's a huge thing too.
For sure.
I think for me, I mean, coming as a fantasy commissioner, I mean, it's just going to be stats. Let's get more stats implemented, both in the broadcast, both on the website, available to the general public there, so people can do with what they will with that. Obviously, we've had the pleasure of getting our hands on some additional stats that has made this fantasy season a whole lot more fun. Vandy, I think we haven't talked to you about this since you first played your first 2 weeks, but you loving the new stats, man. Is it a good time?
Like the website?
No, just like the new addition, like the meters gained.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. Like exponentially better. Like, right. I mean, we talked about it all offseason. We knew it was going to be great, but it's everything we were hoping for. Like, I love it.
Absolutely. So I'm hoping that maybe they're
even though I'm still 0-2, and like they're helping me that much, but I mean.
And can we just not forget Nick Benson, please? Just take away the dang water break. Like it's
all right. You said that once, man.
It's like zero. It's like 0 degrees Celsius outside. They don't need water after 20 minutes. Let them play. Like, hurry up.
Is there any other league in the entire world that has that
when it's really hot?
I mean, football every 45 seconds.
No, but no. But I'm talking about rugby though. Like,
no, none of them have it unless it's like a heat advisory warning. Not when it's 0 degrees Celsius or 12 degrees Fahrenheit outside.
Did you guys never got water breaks when you played, eh?
No.
Only when it was like really, really hot.
No,
we really hot.
We never got water breaks. It is I mean, for me, I think it is because that it gives an opportunity for them to fit in.
Okay, but hold on. They played
breaks.
They play the same. They play the same 2 commercials every time. It's the Rhino Rugby commercial, and then they play the This Is Rugby that's out of date that still has the Gilchrest teams on there.
Maybe Rhino Rugby. Maybe Rhino.
I've seen that actually.
Right?
Maybe Rhino.
You see DTH Vandermeer sitting there crossed arms, looking in the photo like that, as if he's played in the last 2 years.
I mean, maybe Rhino Rugby is just forking over a whole lot of money there. So hey, who knows? Yeah. But let's move on to the next big announcement, which kind of has more kind of, I guess, what's the word? A little bit more implication on us. It sounds
we'll take it down.
It sounds like the MLR is getting involved with fantasy rugby. But
wait, they said they're making fantasy rugby a reality, Ryan.
Right.
Did you see that?
And we on our social accounts did post about this, and we said, hey, this sounds a little bit familiar. And I think we can go back in the record books and in the tapes and show that I think since day one here on the Fantasy Ruckers show, we've been saying that we're going to be making fantasy rugby a reality in the MLR since day one. And that's way before 55 episodes in that now, I guess this company, Oval 3, is partnering with MLR to bring not just fantasy rugby to the MLR, but what is called NFT fantasy MLR. So
about a year and a half late on that.
I'm not quite sure.
Didn't they try NFTs last year already?
Right. We were talking in the Discord channel where I feel like it was James Dealey who said that he had one of these and now it's like worthless now. Like it's like, what am I supposed to do with this thing? But someone in our Discord chat had mentioned that he had his hands on one of those cards. But I don't know how that approaches fantasy rugby. I don't know how NFTs are involved in that. When I think about fantasy historically and fantasy sports, it doesn't include that.
I think it's gonna be from what I saw, it's gonna be more like the non-traditional North American fantasy rugby. It's gonna be more closer to the Rugby Brew and some of those where you select a team, you have a salary, guys have their same players and stuff like that. Nothing like us, nothing like the way that we're doing it, rolling it out. I mean, it is what it is. I guess, Ryan, when we talked about wishes for Nick Benson didn't listen to any of us and just decided to say, hey, screw you guys.
Well, that's what I said. I mean, I think here at the Fantasy Ruckers, we have a pretty solid blueprint of what successful fantasy MLR looks like. And we're not necessarily hiding it in any way. So to cheat off of us, I don't think we would have taken any offense. But the fact that they went in a completely different direction with this NFT stuff, hey, we're not complaining. And we can continue to say we are the maybe not the first official, but we are the first fantasy
I'm
rugby,
still saying we're the pioneers
in the MLR. And
and I'm not buying any of those Yu-Gi-Oh cards that they're selling.
damn right, we're protesting against that. All right, I guess it's time now. Let's get into a little bit of Commissioner Yee's league update.
Here
Hear ye, hear ye!
Hear ye, hear ye, here is Commissioner Yee with a Fantasy Ruckers League update. Before I get into that, the one piece of news and note that I did miss that I wanted to quickly mention was congratulations to Sam Windsor, who becomes the first player in US MLR history to pass 500 points in the competition. I think that's a really, really big deal, just because to have someone that has been as pivotal. And you talk about pioneers, Vandy. This is like one of the guys that has been one of those pioneers in being an instrumental part in the game as the MLR has grown. Sam Windsor has been one of those guys originally on the Houston SaberCats, now in the New York Ironworkers. This is a guy that has racked up a kicking percentage of just under 74%. He's 181 points ahead of the next highest active player.
That's insane.
181 points. So I think it's got to give kudos to Sam Windsor and everything that he's done for the game, and it's obviously super exciting to continue to see what he has here. A total of 506 points after that match against the Toronto Arrows this past week, which we'll obviously break down. But let's get into the Fantasy Ruckers League update here. This is something that everyone is obviously waiting for, to see how this league is starting to shake out after two rounds, and I find it completely ironic because I guess we got to start with this because if those of you who don't know, Rugby Morning has been putting out weekly articles for us in terms of breaking down on a weekly basis.
I don't know if you want to listen to
fantasy
those
rugby
ones.
and things like that. Yeah, this might be a reason why you shouldn't, because he in his draft grading system had Rugby Wrap Up, I believe, as the very last team with the worst draft grade. Is that correct? Can you verify that with me, Matt?
Yeah,
Is that
it was
correct?
pretty low. It was pretty low down there.
Absolutely. And he now has the highest point total by over 20 points in our Fantasy Ruckers League, and starts right now with a 2-0 at the top of our standings here in the Fantasy Ruckers League. And I'll break it down here. The only other team that's undefeated is the Feral Hippies at 2-0, and then we have a whole bunch of 1-1 teams: Eagles Overseas, Ruck and Roll, Lads on Tour, Rugby Morning, Dankus Anchors, MLR Stats, and two 0-2 teams. Vandy, unfortunately, you're sitting there, but we're pulling for you, buddy. The Ruck and Goat, you are there at 0-2, and then MLR All Access struggling a little bit, and we'll get into maybe why that's happening. Part of it,
They got no access.
I'll hint is that AJ Alatimu with their first overall pick is something that's really hurting them here in the long run. With the,
I heard that.
Their first round
Jordan
pick.
Look at that. The two guys that are win don't have a first round pick.
That is true. I don't think there's a coincidence there. So just to break down the matchups that led to those results: Feral Hippies beating Eagles Overseas 92.4 points to 82. Rugby Wrap Up beating Gimme the Loots MLR All Access 99.7 to 43.2. Absolute bashing there. Rugby Morning beating Dankus Anchors 97.4 to 76. MLR Stats beating the Ruck and Goats 60.2 to 57.1. That's a close one, Vandy. You almost had the win there. MLR Stats picked up Mitch Richardson. He picked up 4.1 points, a little bit of a tough loss there. And then Matt, a little bit of a tough one against the former champion, Lads on Tour, who basically on the back of, I think, one of the players of the week that we'll break down, essentially scoring a quarter of his points, 81.3 to 72.8, falling short there. I guess as we just shift on to another update here, Vandy, haven't had the chance to ask you yet, man, but how cool is it to say you talked about the additional stats and how fun it's been there for you, but to see these higher point totals compared to what you were dealing with last year, how much more fun is it to have that? I know it's been a little bit tough for you to rack up points, but at least you're getting 57.1 instead of 2 or 3 on a weekly basis as last year.
Well, exactly that. I mean, everybody's points are blown up, obviously, but no, it's a hell of a lot better seeing guys get close to 100. You know, it's as devastating as it is. It doesn't feel as like as much as a whole as last year when it was so try dependent. It felt like at points I was like, well, I might as well write off the season, even though I'm 0-2. I'm still gunning.
Absolutely. Hey, that's all about it. It's still an early start to the season. We've knowing the fantasy sports that we played in the past, Vandy, we know the turnarounds that can happen. 0-2 is nothing. And if there's anyone that can do it, it's the fantasy expert himself.
Maybe we gotta stop calling me that.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe we gotta tone it down a little bit.
We gotta put 3 wins in 2 years so far.
Well, I mean,
you're looking pretty good.
I'm more so alluding to, I guess, your expertise in other fantasy sports. Has that translated to fantasy MLR yet? Maybe we'll work on it, but we're getting there. But yeah, that's the latest here in the Fantasy Ruckers League happenings here. Rugby Wrap Up again at the top. Total fantasy.
Well, let's just temper. You know, the guy has a bunch of Rugby New York guys. They come off a high scoring game against Seattle.
Sure.
They pretty much win the easiest match that I'll ever see a team win in a long time. So let's temper the expectations. I mean, they've gotten lucky with two pretty good matchups for half of their team.
Sure. It's still very early on. All right, let's just shift to our last kind of little update here. I just want to give a shout out to our website aficionado,
the Kirshinator,
the guy that's been basically keeping this whole new process up to date and really up afloat. I got to give a shout out to Alistair Kirschpool, who has been the web developer, if you don't know, for our website, and he's been fantastic helping people. We had a little bit of a hiccup here this past week that we had to get resolved, and him and I working hard. Him more so, I would say. Me just kind of relaying the information and putting the stats in, but for him to kind of put the work that he has to keep this website going has been fantastic. I want to give a shout out to our league managers as well for the patience that they've shown.
Yeah, no problem.
For kind of coping with that. But again, I think this is all going to be something that is going to benefit us in the long run. Again, this is something that's going to be instrumental in growing fantasy rugby to more than just the Fantasy Ruckers League, but to everyone out there. And we're continuing to work through that. And I think this website, and Vandy, you mentioned it, has been absolutely fantastic so far and has expanded so much for this league. We're going to continue to work hard on that. So again, shout out to Alistair Kirschpool for all that he's done. And then shout out to
us, Vandy. Shout out to us.
Right.
For the patience and all that. So yeah, it's a learning process for all of us, and it's been a lot of fun so far while doing it. So you can't really complain when you got those two things together. All right, that's about does it for the Commissioner Yee's League update. You guys ready to break down some games here from round 2?
Let's get to it.
All right, let's start breaking down some games here and talk about some of the key players that have really popped in this round 2. We'll open up with that first late Friday night matchup. Seattle Seawolves taking on Rugby Atlanta. Seattle taking it 28-22. A pretty exciting match there, but Seattle looks absolutely in form right now. I mean, it looks like that front pack that they rely so heavily on typically has really reemerged itself despite the injury to Ronan Foley. Reichard Hadding looks very, very, very good. He had a fantastic performance right now with the total 32.4 fantasy points on the season, 22.7 in this past week, 2 tries, 103 meters gained, 8 tackles. He's really worth that second overall pick that was selected in our draft. Let's shift it to you guys. Matt, I'll start with you, dude. What do you think about this Seattle team? Are they the real deal? And then we'll flip it over to Rugby Atlanta right after.
Yeah, I mean, Reichard Hadding, look, somebody's got to test him. Let's just double check it. Let's make sure nothing's going on there. He looked a little bit too strong in the game on Friday night. So
he just had
MLR,
that
MLR Nick Benson, maybe first thing on the list. Let's have a check.
He just had that water. I don't know. Have you guys seen
the water?
The movie,
water.
The movie from Space Jam. When they go into halftime and
that's right.
The special juice Bugs Bunny.
The water that has the Nugenix Total T in there. Yeah, okay, exactly. That one. Frank Thomas. Yeah, that guy. But Seattle looks good. I mean, it's not just like for me. I think the biggest surprise and the biggest. The guy who's really running the ship and steering the ship there is Jordan Shate. I mean, the guy has been instrumental in their success. The guy was almost perfect off the tee and like across the 2 games, and he has been just the perfect kind of ball mover and orchestrator of the game, which is exactly what you're looking for at the 10 position. And I mean, courageous of Seattle to pick him over Alatimu,
right?
And it seems to be paying off.
Yeah. Jordan Chait, 12.3 fantasy points in round 2 in that matchup against Rugby Atlanta. 80 minutes played, 23 meters gained, 10 tackles. But the big thing being that he's been clutch off the boot. 2 conversion kicks this past week, 3 penalty kicks coming off of in that round 1, 6 penalty kicks the week before. So when you have a guy that is able to be that consistent from the tee, like you said, Matt, it's hard to not just be consistently good at points there. We shift on over now to, I guess, some Rugby Atlanta players and kind of what they kind of have gone through. Ruida Biddle has been very, very impressive. I mean, coming off of a 16.6 fantasy performance in round 1, he comes out starting at the back 3 position, 14 fantasy points, 94 meters gained, 2 tackles, and he was kicking out there. 2 conversion kicks, 1 penalty kick. Partly that's probably due to the lack of Kirk Coleman playing in this past week. Not too sure the situation there, but Ruida Biddle looks like a guy that is going to be very instrumental for Rugby Atlanta. But I guess from an overall standpoint, what do you guys think about Rugby Atlanta and their performance against Seattle? A formidable one, I will say, because Seattle, I think right now looks like the team to beat right now, and to keep within I guess a try score of them is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I think the score is a little bit misleading. I think Rugby Atlanta's offense looked a little bit stale. I thought that the lineup that they had last week with having Rarita Biddle at the 12 position, being able to be that second ball mover, actually was a little bit more explosive for them. But I mean, they did come within a try. I just think that they should move back to the lineup they had last week, because that was their offense, and their back line looked a lot better then.
And then I'll mention also some other guys. Jason Dam, back rower for Rugby Atlanta. He looked pretty good too. 14.2 fantasy points, 80 minutes, 53 meters gained, 13 tackles, and the big one being 2 breakdown steals as well in there. Also on the list, JP Smith. A little bit of a disappointing, obviously, first round there with only racking up 2 fantasy points, but coming out hot. 80 minutes, 1 try, 81 meters gained. Obviously, a big one. I believe it was an interception try, I want to say. That was obviously a big thing. When you have those explosive plays, obviously that's going to play in the fantasy perspective, fantasy benefit there. So, yeah, JP Smith obviously coming out there. And then some other guys to go down the list. Johan Mumson with a formidable performance, 10.5 fantasy points. He actually started at the back row position. And, Matt, I know you drafted him. That is going to be a huge advantage for you with him.
He's so easy to find on the field.
Yeah,
he's the easiest guy to find. He's just big lard of a ginger and just running around. It's awesome. It's so easy to find him. Absolutely. I'm just like, yep, he scored.
That's funny. All right, now let's shift.
Before I just want to talk something about JP Smith. Quick thing: if you take a look at his tackles, I'm going to get into a little bit of rugby specific here, but if you look at his tackles, I mean, the guy's racking up 8-7 tackles, something you don't really expect from the 9 position. But if you look at the way that they're playing defense, they have him, rather than sweeping behind, they have him sitting up in the back line, out in the outside the centers. So, I mean, that's more chance of getting more points to get tackles, just because he's going to be coming up off the line rather than waiting to cover for line break. So, just something there to note for JP Smith, a bit of an advantage to have him on your roster as well. That's how he got the intercept. So,
yeah, no kidding. All right, let's shift over now to the Utah Warriors Dallas Jackals matchup. I know, Vandy, you'll like talking about this one here. Utah coming up with a big win, 33-25. Got a little bit worrisome there.
Yeah, man, I thought they were coming back
as Dallas kind of started to pull within reach, but Utah able to kind of leg it out here. Before we get into, I guess, some of the fantasy players, Vandy, I got to go to you, man. You watched this match. Obviously, you're the in-house Utah Warriors fan that people chose for you. What did you think of Utah and their performance against Dallas?
Man, I gotta say, Paul Lasike is so good, dude. Gosh. He is so good, actually.
Joel Hodgson couldn't stop using
Joel Hodgson looked really good, actually, too.
Yeah,
McEnany kind of got a lucky one there, I think, off of Lasike, his try. But honestly, man, great game. Defense. Wow, we went up like 21-3. I'm like, yo, game over. I'm ready for some points here, and then that comeback almost had me puking in my mouth, but.
Yeah,
no, I mean, great game.
Man, Lasike, they just continue to use him.
I mean, he looked dominant, man.
Oh yeah,
dominant.
They just kept dishing him the ball, honestly, and he would continue to break the line. And what are you supposed to do? As one, the Dallas Jackals defense stinks. They are awful. And the fact that they're getting go forward ball with Lasike every time, it just makes it even harder for a bad defense to defend that.
Oh, he looks.
I mean, he might be one of the steals of the year. To be honest,
yeah. He was pivotal. Without him, I don't know what we do.
He was picked in the 15th round of our Fantasy Ruckers League MLR draft, which is the second last round, which is pretty crazy to think about now in hindsight. But Matt, you're right, and Vandy, you're right too. That they are choosing some plays for him where he's just crashing that line and using.
Well, I'm pretty sure he had the most ball carries on anyone on the squad.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
I mean, from a fantasy perspective, 17.6 fantasy points, 60 minutes played, 89 meters gained. You throw in a try and a try assist. That's just a big time overall performance from that center position. I guess before I get into, I might as well do it now. Let's get into some other kind of top Utah player performance here. Caleb McEnany. I mean, back to back 15 plus point performances in both round 1 and round 2.
Looks awesome.
17.4 in round 2 here, 80 minutes. He adds another try. So he's gone 2 games with back-to-back tries, 106 meters gained. So not only is he getting you those points by scoring, but he's also just has been consistently been able to rack up those meters gained, which we said in earlier in the year that's going to be a big benefactor in terms of consistency in points from a week-to-week basis. And then he also added a kick there as well. So there is obviously the versatility when Joel Hodgson isn't in that fly half starting role. Joe Mano looking pretty good too. 19.9 fantasy points, 109 meters gained, a try assist and a try.
Yeah, and Mika Kruse over there on the other wing.
Yeah, man.
Kruse just absolutely tearing it up.
Yeah,
118 meters gained for him, 16.3 fantasy points. Again, adding the 80-minute
he just got a try too.
5 tackles, yeah, and that would have just pushed him a whole lot higher as well. Let's now shift over, I guess, to some Dallas players. But before I get into the Dallas players, I would say, you say, Matt, that their defense is a little bit questionable, but after now putting up 25 points in this week, after what was probably a pretty weak performance against the Houston SaberCats in week 1.
Yep.
Are you a little bit more confident and more willing from a fantasy perspective to maybe bank on some Dallas guys? And I think we'll talk about one guy at least in the waiver wire, but are you willing to bank a little bit more on these Dallas Jackals guys instead of what we said earlier to start the season that you're staying away from Dallas? I think we only had like 2 guys drafted in our entire draft from Dallas.
I was going to say that their defense is probably the worst thing that in the league. Absolutely the worst thing in the league. But for our fantasy league, I don't care. I don't care how many tries you let up.
That's true.
I could care less how many tries you let up as a team.
Yep.
If you're scoring, 25 points in a game, if you're consistently having guys like Sam Gala putting up points, Conrad Arura, Eric Naposki, these guys are able to get meters gained and actually have an offense that looked alive in that second half.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, why wouldn't I pick those guys? I spent $11 on Adrian Boyson. I mean, I clearly had that guy is huge, by the way. But I mean, for sure, I think the Dallas guys you can definitely look at, but let's take it as a grain of salt. I mean, I think they're still gonna have those games like they did against the SaberCats. They're still gonna have a tough time.
I mean, Utah's defense
tough,
is pretty bad too.
Yeah, it's tough when you have a defense like that to just turn the momentum and get quick go forward ball. It's tough. I mean, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see for sure.
Absolutely. All right, let's break down some players here on the Dallas Jackals side. I think the biggest one is obviously the guy you mentioned, Eric Naposki, which is going to be a guy that we're going to be talking about here in the waiver wire segment.
Vandy, you see that step?
Oh my God.
Little in out.
Dude, probably like the announcer said Juke of the year. I'm like, maybe. Absolutely gross.
Yeah, and unfortunately, no points given for that. But despite that, he was still able to rack up
5 points for breaking ankles.
Yeah,
Could
exactly.
you imagine?
17.7 fantasy points, played the full 80 minutes, added the 2 tries, meters gained a little bit on the iffy side, 45 meters gained.
Well, I got lucky on the 2 tries.
How many times did I say this guy's name last year, saying how good he was going to be?
That's true. That is
every time I said it, and you know what? Look at him. Look at him go.
Yeah.
Look at my boy Naposki.
I swear to God, you have a third arm patting yourself on the back all the time.
Yeah, I do all the time, literally.
And I want to mention another guy here on the Dallas Jackals as well, because I think one of the big storylines heading into this season is who are we going to bank on in terms of a rookie perspective that would be fantasy relevant?
Collegiate draft rookie.
I think there were a collegiate draft rookie, exactly. I believe that there was a lot of hesitancy. We didn't know the involvement that these guys were going to have. But I think if there was one guy that anyone was going to hedge their bets on, it was going to be the first overall pick in the 2023 the 2023 collegiate MLR draft, Sam Gala. And he proved why he was so important in this matchup here. 14.6 fantasy points, 80 minutes played, 88 meters gained, a try assist, 11 tackles. And I think the big thing here, and this is something that we're going to talk about here in the round 3 preview, because I think we're going to have to start looking about our eligibilities here as in our rules of the Fantasy Ruckers League. If guys start 3 games at a certain position, they gain an eligibility at that position. If they go 3 games without starting at that position, they actually lose that eligibility as well. And Sam Gala is a guy that had played back row. We had him listed as a back row heading into the season, but these are back-to-back games with second row starts that he's had, which means if he starts another week here as the second rower, he gains that eligibility, loses the back row eligibility. But if he's able to put 14.6 points up from the second row position, that is going to be a huge advantage. And we're talking about a guy that's just 2 games into his MLR career.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing that we're seeing is, and the big question with the rookies is, how much playing time are they going to get?
Yep.
You know, are they going to get full 80 minutes? Are they going to play? Are they going to be starting for the team? We didn't know, especially thinking that Golo was going to be in the back row position, because we know that that's where the Jackals had players.
Right.
But knowing that he's getting that playing time, he's getting 70 minutes in the first game, 80 minutes in the second. I think it was a great guy to take a chance on, and a great guy to kind of look at as a rookie who's going to succeed in our fantasy rugby league.
Absolutely. All right, let's now shift on over to Houston SaberCats Nola Gold. Matt, we haven't talked about your early
Holy
season
cow.
prediction yet, but I think
Vandy.
you might start to sweat a little bit here. Vandy, if you don't remember, Matt predicted that the Nola Gold were going to be your 2023.
I do remember.
You might be second last, but I am in last place with that freezing cold take right there. Holy cow!
So
this offense, man.
The Houston SaberCats
goodness.
beating the Nola Gold pretty easily here, 35-14. And yeah, Matt, you put it correctly there. Nola just can't find the offense right now.
My goodness.
Really surprising, because we obviously thought with the additions of Luke Campbell, who we'll get into, who hasn't been starting as of yet.
Who?
Yeah, Vandy's definitely feeling the
Hey,
brunt of
who?
having him on his roster. And I mean, we were all so high on the addition of Rodney Iona, having a guy that has the experience from the facilitating position, really just not making any impact. But I guess let's start with the Nola Gold, man. Like, what's wrong with them right now? And are you right now considering them? Because Matt, you also have Nola Gold shares too, with JP Duplessis as your top pick as well. Are you starting to put Nola into that realm of maybe this is a team, maybe not obviously for your studs, but maybe for some edge guys? Are you trying to stay away from the Nola Gold in terms of relying on them for any fantasy production?
Yeah, I mean, look, they'll turn it around at some point. I don't think that the Nola Gold is a team that is quite like the Dallas Jackals as of yet. The forward pack can still be trusted. I think, guys like Jared Adams, guys like Tom Florence. So we saw the forward pack is still able to produce. It's really just the way that back line and that offensive is functioning. Kicks aren't going where they need to go. Kicks are staying in play. They're making big mistakes in terms of kick placement. Damian Stevens at time looks like he doesn't know where he's supposed to pass the ball. It just looks disjointed.
Else, eh?
Yeah, if only they had somebody else who's played pro rugby overseas and Super Rugby, one of the top leagues in the world. But yeah, I mean, it just looks scattered. They look unorganized. I don't think we're going to get to that point. I think Jordan Jackson Hope and JP Duplessis are guys who are still putting up points. So, they're still putting up points. They're not yet a team that we can say, they're going to score 10 points or 3 points a week.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm more saying, obviously you're going to play your studs, right? We're still early in the season. You still got to rely on those guys. But I guess for more of these like fringe guys that you may be relying on to maybe, start in a pinch or something, that you might be shying away from Nola now after seeing how they performed over the first 2
Yeah,
weeks.
if you need to make a quick pickup, you are not picking up a Nola guy at the moment.
Exactly.
Because all the good guys are already picked up, right?
I mean, let's talk about some big performers for Nola. I mean, there were some shining spots here for at least from a fantasy perspective. The big one is Tom Florence, and that you were the victim of Tom Florence, of basically why you lost your matchup this week. 22.1 fantasy points. I believe that might be outside of maybe one player who's also in this matchup as well. I think that's one of the highest fantasy points totals for this week. 82 minutes, 2 tries, 71 meters gained, 15 tackles. 15 tackles. That's back-to-back weeks with 15 tackles. That's absolutely incredible. And again, we talked about the consistency of adding tackles to our league. When you get a guy that's looking for that much contact, even when your team is not scoring any more than 14 points and is really struggling, even take away those tries that try that Tom Florence scored. I mean, 15 tackles alone is a great performance that you're looking at. Another guy that I believe I want to mention is Jordan Jackson Hope. You mentioned him too, Matt. 12.9 fantasy points, an adequate performance there. 82 minutes, 78 meters gained, 7 tackles. So definitely good.
Also want to touch on Jared Adams. I mean,
he was so good.
He comes off the bench this week, and he still looks good. Still puts up a lot of points for a front row. I'm pretty sure he's a free agent at the moment. He's on the waiver wire. So, this might be a guy that people might be looking up to. We'll touch on in the waiver wire
Yeah.
segment, but
it's
but
tough.
yeah, that's 2
It's
games in a
tough,
row
though.
though. He's still looking good.
It's tough for a front rower coming off the bench.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair though, if there's any position,
But do you think? But I don't see him coming off the bench again.
Sure. I mean, and we'll talk about in the waiver wire segment, but that's the leap of faith that you're gonna have to take, right? You're not gonna know before waivers go through Thursday morning here in our fantasy Ruckers League. You're not going to have a lineup from Nola yet. So.
And it's no longer we have to pick up hookers. It's no longer we have to rely on hookers to get this. The front row position is a free for all battle because the props are honestly the guys that are making more tackles.
And I was just gonna say, I was gonna say that too, is that out of all the positions that got subbed in, the front row is the position that gets subbed in with probably the most amount of time left in that match. You know what I mean? It's very much closer to an even keel split. You'll see often 45-minute subs outs, 50-minute subs out. And I think that provides the opportunity for Jared Adams to come and do that. And it would be even a bigger plus if he gets the starting role. Vandy, you got something to add to that?
No, I think you guys hit it on the head.
Cool. All right. Well, let's shift over.
You on the head.
Let's go shift over now to Houston. And Matt might have had a really cool take with his Nola Gold thing, but I think since day one, I was telling the people that Houston SaberCats were a team that needed to be watched. I love the moves that they made in the offseason, and one of the guys that I was talking about glowingly leading up to the draft, leading up into my mock draft,
glowingly, Vandy.
Hanko Gramicius. Let me talk to you about Hanko Gramicius. 16.1 fantasy points this past year, coming off a 14.5 fantasy point performance the week before. 82 minutes. Didn't even need a try this week. 52 meters gained. And 18 tackles as well.
Crazy.
So Hanko Gramicius putting in work there for the back row for Houston. But before I get into any other kind of big performance here on the Houston side of things, is Houston a team that you are now, I guess, the flip side of what I was saying about Nola? This is a team that obviously 2 years ago was struggling. I believe they were last in the league back in 2020. 2021, 2022. Obviously kind of an up and down year, but ended up getting into the playoffs because of the circumstances that happened. And then now they look like they are a team to beat, and they are now amongst the undefeated teams here to start the MLR season. Houston looks like they are the real deal, and you want shares of the SaberCats from a fantasy perspective.
Oh, yeah. I think this back line that back row and the back line is dangerous.
Yeah.
I mean, you go all the way from the back row with Gideon Van Vick, or Gideon Van Vyk, or Gideon Van Wick, John Wick, and then Hanko Gramicius, right? But then you go to the back line, you got, Denishan, Coates, they don't even have Vanderskiff in there.
No,
right? He's injured this week.
Right now. Yep.
But Dom McKenna comes in from the Gilgronis. They pick him up. He steps in and scores, breaks 20 tackles to score a try.
Yep.
And out on the wing, Tiki Similoni.
Yep, you got it.
Tico Solomoni.
You got
Tico
it.
Solomoni, former All Black Sevens, or Fijian Sevens, one of the Sevens teams. But I mean, they just seem to have everything clicking right now. And no matter who they have playing on their team, guys coming off the bench, guys replacing injured guys, they are looking good.
Yeah, I hype up Gramicius because he's a guy that I was obviously high on heading into the fantasy season. But the guy you mentioned it, Matt, that I really do need to highlight in this match is Gideon Van Wick, Gideon Van Vyk. We're getting there. Back row didn't play in that first match there for the Houston SaberCats. Comes in round 2 at that back row. 25 fantasy points, 82 minutes, 2 tries, 112 meters gained, 11 tackles. Talk about basically a perfect fantasy performance from the back row position. He was a huge player there. Matt, you mentioned Dominic Aquina, 14 points this week, 82 minutes, a try, 38 meters gained, and 9 tackles, which is pretty good to see. Really from a Houston standpoint, just a really solid overall play there. Christian Dyer too, 16.6 fantasy points, a try. Now he has 2 back-to-back weeks with tries as well. 92 meters gained this week, 8 tackles. This Houston SaberCats team looks like you want some shares of this team because they look like that they're right now rolling. And they definitely took advantage over a struggling Nola Gold team. All right, let's shift over now to our Sunday matchups. I don't want to spend too much time on this game because
we shouldn't.
Not a fun game to watch.
It was actually embarrassing.
An absolute, and I don't even think New York necessarily played that well in this match either. I think they could have put up a whole lot more points on a struggling Toronto Arrows team, but New York Ironworkers beating Toronto Arrows at home in their very first match at Mount Vernon. Matt, you were actually at the match.
I was
You went there.
Oh, really?
Got to see a couple
was
friends. Got to enjoy a cold one or two there as well. I guess before we get in the match, the atmosphere nice. That was your very first MLR experience.
It was my very first MLR experience. The atmosphere, it was nice. It was no 11,000 people.
You
at
never
Snapdragon
hold
Stadium.
back, eh?
It was no 11,000 people at
He says
Snapdragon
it how
Stadium.
it is, Vanny, and that's
I
why we
know.
love him.
I've always
But
loved
look,
that about you.
but look, I'll be honest. They made me choose a seat and reserve a spot, but I really could have picked anywhere in the lot. I paid $25 for a ticket on the side. I could have walked over and sat in a $55 ticket spot. There were empty spots everywhere.
Turns out the seats were free. You paid a homeless guy $25.
Hey, I wouldn't be surprised. That guy just running the website behind, but no, it was honestly, it was pretty good for a home opener. They had a couple food trucks, some drinks. Enjoy the time. The only complaint that I have outside of that is the fact that the announcer at the field was probably the worst announcer. Every penalty was somehow either a not rolling away or off your feet.
Hey, did you
And
boo?
it was none.
Did
It was
you
none
boo
of them.
during the water break or?
No.
So
I
in
didn't
real
boo
life,
during
you're
the
not
water
that
break.
tough, eh? Yeah.
No, I'm not that tough. I'm only tough behind the camera in the safety of my room.
No, that's fine. Yeah, call him out, Vandy.
That's
right.
No, I didn't boo it.
That's why we have you here, man. You keep Matt in check. I can't always do it all the time, but
I
you
can keep
definitely-
myself in check.
No,
right?
you can't.
The best
No,
part
you
is
can't.
the score keeps me in check, and I keep
Yeah.
Matt in check.
Yeah,
There we go.
exactly.
There we go. But
Did you
Ryan,
imagine
that
if I
was
was
the word. That was a
Oh, God, this would suck.
well. Hey, one day, man. Maybe next year. But Ryan, it was one of the worst games I've ever seen. It was bad.
I mean,
It was bad.
I mean, I want to make sure I quote this correctly, but Brian Ray, he did come out on Twitter, and I believe he said that was one of the worst Toronto Arrows performances, I think, in the...
No, not just Arrows performances. Not just Arrows. Like, Ryan, I was sitting there watching.
Yeah.
I mean, look, all the respect for Mitchie. I mean, the guy gets thrown into a position. Yes, 10 is his natural position.
Right.
The guy put three restarts in a row straight out of bounds.
I know, I did.
Like,
And also the kicking too. And, okay, I want to preface by saying this because again, I don't want to touch too much on Toronto Arrows because it's like it's beating a dead horse here. They're dealing with a whole bunch of
Or
injuries.
beat a
too.
dead horse.
It's you guys. Man.
Like, come on, man. Dang.
Now you made me lose my train of thought. You
Well,
guys are
you're
ridiculous.
just-
Well, it's
Beating a
because
dead
they don't.
horse.
It's because you got to stop beating the dead horse, Ryan.
Um,
Put it away. Put the hammer away.
The Toronto Arrows are obviously dealing with a whole bunch of injuries.
And
That's
more
obvious-
now.
And more now. Obviously, there was the scare there with Kieran Breen and Cole Davis, I believe correctly.
Yeah.
There with that.
Or
jump.
according to the PA announcer, his name was Cyarian Breen. Yeah, that was what I heard.
That's funny. Yeah, so we hope that obviously Cole Davis is all right. Pretty scary moment there, but really there was no one to be shined here in this Toronto Arrows side here at all.
Well, hey, let's just point out one thing. Kobe Faust, or according to the PA announcer, Jake Faust or Kyle Faust, something that they called him. Kobe Faust, I think, becomes the youngest player ever to score points off the tee as a 20-year-old.
Okay.
So that's a silver lining for them. That's
we're
about it.
we're really reaching here.
Yeah, we're about silver linings here.
Nine and a half.
Yeah, you would.
In case you wanted to know, Kobe Foss, 9.4 fantasy points on the week, 80 minutes, 53 meters gained, 7 tackles. But let's talk more here now about Rugby New York because obviously there's a whole bunch of guys that had pretty solid performances. We talk about Sam Windsor with hitting the 506-point mile marker. He went double digits again. Andrew Coe looks very, very good. Almost scoring a try. Just got tackled down, I believe, within the 10-meter mark.
Would've won me the
13
week.
He told me after the game that he was getting a cramp. That's why he had to go down.
Yeah, of
What
course
a one
he
me
said.
the week, Cole.
He said I was
Yeah,
running.
honestly,
and I got
Vandy,
a
that
cramp
would've
and I
won
couldn't
you
go
a
That
week.
would have
anymore.
won me the week. I know.
Honestly, 111 meters
Damn
gained for
cramp.
him.
Kidding me?
Four tackles, adding a steal in there as well. He actually made the MLR
Kid
the
go.
MLR team
I
of the
love
week,
you.
I believe.
You know how you know why he made it? He I don't know if anybody saw. If you didn't see, go back and watch the last 3 minutes of the game. But this guy saves a penalty from going out into touch, catches it under pressure, kicks a banana kick, and goes out on like the 50 from inside his 22. Ridiculous.
Who did?
I told him that. I said that was the best thing that he did all game.
And then shifting over to the other side of the wing, Ed Fido looks like he's really paying dividends here as the top pick in our fantasy MLR draft. Not necessarily a flashy performance, didn't add a try there, but still 12.9
He's a scary dude.
points. Yeah, dude.
He's a scary dude.
124 meters gained. The week before, 135. If you're racking up over 100 meters gained just on a consistent basis, that's going to be exciting stuff, and it's definitely going to provide a whole lot of consistency there as well. I mean, outside of that, really not much else that I not need to touch. Fuatai looked very good. 17.
He also played at back row at the end of the game.
The announcer hit me with a bait and switch. He said,
"Yeah,
Emery got a try."
I know.
He's like, Jason Emery with the try.
So
I'm like,
you know, Vandy, you know that's Matt McCarthy, right? Like
Matt
in the league, the rugby wrap up, Matt McCarthy, who's in our league. Yeah, he did say Jason Emery, and I saw it because I knew you had him on your team. Like, oh, Vandy's got a points here, and then he was like, oh wait, no, that's Fasu Fuatai.
For a guy who was correcting us the whole live stream draft on names, that's pretty wrong, dude.
Hey,
that's a pretty wrong name you got there.
No kidding. 17.8 fantasy points, 1 try, 80 minutes played, 65 meters gained, 11 tackles there, and that's something that is obviously going to be crucial for the center position. The big thing,
I think we're kind of just beating the horse just by boosting up New York at this point.
I mean, the big thing, though, I want to mention, is that the center position is going to be very interesting to watch for this rugby or New York Ironworkers team. Obviously, Tay Walden started the week before. He came off the bench this week. Jason Emery, I believe, starting this week. And Fuatai starting this week instead. So it'll be interesting to see kind of who plays in that and how that really affects the fantasy perspective. But all right.
Okay, last thing, Ryan, the Toronto center pairing is the most bodacious center pairing in the league. They're so thick. Okay, let's move on.
All right, I'm just gonna leave it at that. All right, probably the matchup that was hyped up the most heading into this weekend, and deservingly so, because it was one of the more exciting ones, I would say, outside of maybe the Seattle Seawolves Rugby Atlanta matchup. San Diego Legion taking on the New England Free Jacks in San Diego, 29-12 victory for the Legion.
Ooh.
And man,
those jerseys.
This Legion team is looking dang.
Vandy, bad time to switch teams.
Yeah, Vandy, we gave you the opportunity, man, to stick with to make that switch, and San Diego is looking red hot. I predicted against them last week, and I am paying the price for that. I told myself now I'm never second guessing the San Diego Legion team again. But yeah, before we get into players, though, do you guys agree with me, Matt, that this San Diego Legion team is the real deal here?
Yeah, I mean, I had a tough time watching because I also have at the New York. I mean, again, they put the games at this like 30 minutes after each other. I had it on my phone while I was watching the game live. You know, the service wasn't that great, so my phone was kind of bugging out, and I was trying to focus on the beating that was happening on the field. But yeah, San Diego looks real good. That offense looks real good.
Nate Osberger looks real good.
Oh, yeah. Talk about the luckiest pick.
I know. Luckiest. Nuh-uh.
Talk about the luckiest pick in the history of the fantasy MLR draft. Matt picks Nate Osberger as his second choice.
Now I need him to go back to 9 this week. I need you to go back to 9. Just start there. Go to the wing in the second half.
I was thinking that. Nate Osberger, 18 back-to-back. 18-plus point performances.
Unreal.
Here. This week, 18.5.
What a legend.
85 minutes played, 2 tries, 74
Wipe
meters
that
gained.
smile off your face.
Yeah.
He takes all luck there. I want to say also on San Diego, I think a guy that has, I believe was he drafted or was he picked up? I got to check that here. But Josh Henderson, he was picked up in our league, wasn't even drafted here, and obviously the prediction going into the season was either it was going to be Will Hooley. Was it Will Hooley that we said that would be there?
Yeah.
Or even what's
too
his
many
name?
tabs open.
Luke Burton.
Luke Burden was picked there. Yeah, I do have too many tabs open. Luke Burden was also picked in the very first round with expectation that he'd be at the fly-out position, but no, Josh Henderson is the one that's kind of taking that, and he's obviously making full dividends out of that big time performance there this week with that 14.3-point performance. Didn't even play 70 minutes, only 59 minutes, but added a try there with 3 tackles as well. I just want to add also, Sama Malolo is looking pretty good
Yep.
too. This is another week where he's got double-digit point performance, something that you love to see from the front row position. 49 minutes, 1 try, 42 meters gained. I love to see a big boy moving through the pack.
Woo.
And any other guys that you saw here that really stuck out to you from the San Diego side of it? It was good, nice to see Christian Poitevin. 10.1 fantasy points, 73 meters gained as well. He made the team of the week. But yeah, this San Diego team just as a whole just looks really, really good.
Yeah, I'm just going to throw up Richard Judd getting
Yep.
double-digit tackles 2 weeks in a row. Not that many points, but it's what you expect from scrum half position. Getting double-digit tackles 2 weeks in a row, it's pretty tasty.
Hey,
Absolutely.
Steven, I need you to reach out to LaRue Milan and ask him what's up.
Yeah, so well, I guess that's a perfect segue into the New England Free Jacks side of things. Yeah, New England looked all right.
Rough go.
Obviously San Diego just was a really, really tough opponent here in this match.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, LaRue Milan, Matt Vandy, you picked him in your first round. He's obviously dealing with something. I'm not too sure. We haven't got any, I guess, intel from the team, at least released publicly. But they have been going with Wayne Vanderbank and Spencer Jones
with
at
the mullet.
at the center position. Yeah, from a Free Jacks perspective, Mitch Wilson, he was a guy that we were talking about being on the cusp.
Don't you
of
miss
having
him,
the top
Vandy?
back
Oh, yeah.
threes. Did 14.7 fantasy
Should've
points
picked
this
him.
week. 138 meters gained. Pretty impressive stuff by good old Mitchie Wilson. Also, Wyan Conradi doing pretty well too. Back row, 14.7 fantasy points. Had the full
Yep.
80 minutes played. 115 meters gained. So yeah, John Poland having a little bit of a rougher start here. 1.1 fantasy points after what was a pretty hyped performance in that round one.
Yeah, he
But yeah,
smoked me week one.
Yeah, just a tough go here for I think New England, but I would still be confident
And
New
Vandy.
England Free
Yeah,
Jacks
and John
will-
Johnston gets that one and beats me.
Oh, I know, John. That was such a whack try. You had a
My
rough week, Vandy.
God!
You had a rough week. That was like what? It was probably the luckiest try too, because I originally thought that John Poland had touched that first, and then Joe Johnson is there.
Oh,
Yeah, I
man,
know, Vandy.
I swear to God.
We feel your struggles there, but
No, you
yeah.
don't.
That's
No, you
no,
don't.
I really don't. But all right, that's the round 2 fantasy MLR breakdown. Pretty exciting stuff again. Just with the addition of these new stats, it's been a whole lot of fun breaking this stuff down. It's a whole lot more fun to watch these games. And I gotta ask our league managers yet if they've yet turned their perspective from to a fantasy perspective where, you know, before they may have been watching rugby's, don't make that extra pass, or at least before they would have said, you know, make the right team play. But this time they're counting on their guys to make sure that they hold on to the ball, which is pretty interesting. I wouldn't be surprised after just 2 rounds that they have that mindset now moving forward. But yeah, let's go into what I think Vandy is probably looking forward to the most here.
Vandy, listen up, buddy.
The waiver wire segment here. Let's talk about some players that we need to be looking at in terms of adding in round 2. I'm sure our other league managers and the people following our league are also going to be interested in who's available and who should be looked at here. I will say, Matt,
watch out, I'm running out of fab.
Just as a recap, I was just gonna say, just as a recap of round 1,
I dropped 50 fab.
you dropped a lot of money, but I do think that it was merited because there was a whole lot of guys in after that first week that kind of shook out in terms of who you're going to expect in these starting lineups who are going to be pivotal players for their respective teams. Because it is a whole lot more desolate here in the second round with who's available to pick up. There's a couple names here and there that you can look at, but definitely not the same amount of players that we saw in that round 1. But nonetheless, let's start talking about some guys. Matt, who's kind of the guy that you're looking at first here as a waiver wire pickup heading into round 2?
Yeah, so I think we talked about this a little bit. No need to shy away from the Dallas team as much. I wouldn't rank them as high as maybe they are, but Eric Naposki is somebody that you can definitely take a shot on and see how he does. Ryan, who has bye this week?
It is
Toronto.
New England Free Jacks and Toronto Arrows.
Got it. So yeah, Naposki I think is a good guy to take a shot on. If you're looking at back 3, I'd also look at Veronecki Tikoi Solomone. I got that one there.
You did get that one. That was
but
good.
as long as Vanderskiff is injured, he's going to continue to start on the wing, and he's looked good. So I would continue riding that train. I talked about Jared Adams as well, and then Luataro Bavaro is still sitting there. We talked about him last week. Old Glory DC's back playing this week. If you need a back row, that's the guy you got to pick up.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's just go quickly, Matt, through percentage of your fab that you would place on these guys. Start with Naposki and go down that list that you had.
Yeah, so Naposki, I would drop if you have 100%. Well, I don't even know. I would drop like
No, just do percentage. Just yeah, if you
5% of your fab on Naposki. I got a big reality check of how many fab people are dropping down on
yeah,
guys.
no
So
kidding.
Jared Adams, I'd probably do around 2 or 3% of whatever you've got. Tico Silimoni, 4% around. Bavaro, I would go up to 10% of your fab. I think he's going to be a big pickup. This guy's going to be a back row start for the rest of the year.
And he may be kind of going under the radar too because Old Glory DC is coming off of the bye. He's kind of sneakily in there, but yeah, he had a huge impact there for Old Glory, who's impressed in that first week, and they'll look to do it again, obviously against the New York Iron Workers, which we'll get into. Yeah, I can't really say there's any Vandy unless you have a name that you want to throw out there. Honestly,
Matt took two of them.
Yeah, those are probably honestly the top guys that I would look at. One that you may start to look at here is Kieran Breen. Maybe obviously you want to stay away from Toronto Arrows guys, but he does have back-to-back weeks where he's put up above 8 points, and he is playing the full match.
I would actually
not explosive, but you know,
from Toronto, I would look at two guys: Fabian Goodall and Tuala Tassi. I don't even think Tuala Tassi is available.
You have him on your team.
No, I dropped him.
Oh, did you drop him? Gotcha. All right.
But Fabian Goodall, the center pairing actually is the only bright spot of that Toronto offense.
He had a lot of tackles too.
Yeah.
All right. So again, pretty skim pickings here in round 2. Obviously, things will start to shake out as we get all like longer in the season. Guys getting dropped, guys getting picked up, especially when more bye weeks kind of play through. I guess to kind of round out this waiver wire segment, there, I think, is a big storyline with regards to some of these big names that aren't making an impact early on.
Yeah.
What advice do you guys have? And Vandy, you can kind of play your fantasy football kind of expertise with this. Guys like AJ Alatimu, guys like Luke Burden, guys that you know haven't been making the impact that you expected to because you had such high draft capital on them. What are you doing with these guys? What is kind of your expectations moving forward? Are you trying to trade them? The trade value is not high right now, so I find that hard to be a thing. You're just biting the bullet. How are you tempering your expectations with some of these guys moving forward?
I think it's a little too early to sell, like especially like AJ Alatimu. I mean, the guy was, so good off the boot last year. So I think it's a little early. I know panic sets in. It quickly sets in fantasy. I'm feeling it a little bit, but no, I think there's certain guys you kind of ride and you die with. Like you draft them that high, you don't want to sell low and then them turning around. So as of
how many more weeks, Matt, does it need to take for Jordan Chait to be starting, for you to be like, you know what, I got to shift off AJ?
4 games for me.
It's tough though. Like the minute you drop him, you're not going to get another chance at him.
No,
sure.
Somebody else is going to take a shot.
That's a bench stash.
Somebody else has him.
Yep.
When we're looking at guys though,
because I mean, if there's an injury, that's a top tier guy. That is number one.
Or
that's a league steal.
Or even if Chait has one bad week. I mean, how easy would it be for the Seattle Seahawks to say, all right, let's move to Alatimu? It's so easy for them to do that. Just because they have that possibility. Oh yeah, 100%.
The MLR is so fluid, man. Like it's actually the craziest league I've ever been a part of. How week to week, it's like, man, a guy will play 20 minutes and the next week he'll play 80. And it won't even be like regarded for injury. It's like, what happened? Like
now, how does that mindset now sort of shift for middle tier guys? I'm talking about guys that maybe were drafted between round 6 to 10.
But look at another guy who was drafted up there, right? Luke Burden.
Okay,
let's look at him. I would drop him right now. When would you ever? He's third on the depth chart in my mind.
Yeah,
and Josh Henderson is playing way too well. And Will Hooley is the next up for me, no doubt.
Right.
Josh Henderson is just playing. He's way too informed. Luke Burden is just, it was a waste of a pick. It's time to drop and figure out who you're going to pick up next.
And I guess it's all about context, right? Because when you see that evidence there that you're really confident in terms of, okay, Luke Burden's the third on the list. He's not going to be getting in, even if Will Hooley is. Like, even if there's an injury involved, that, the chances of him being fantasy relevant aren't that high. But then you shift that conversation to like what we just said with AJ Alatimu, or even like guys like, Luke Campbell.
You haven't even seen him on the bench though.
Or that's true. That's fair enough. So I think it's all varying. But again, shifting back to that question there for you guys is for guys that are in the middle tier, Andrew Quattrin, guys like I'm trying to look down the list here. He's one that came to mind because obviously he had such a big impact on the Arrows, and obviously he's the second man up here for the New England Free Jacks. You're talking about guys like Rodney Iona, who was drafted in that middle picks, and he's like really tough to beat. Like, what are your expectations now, because you didn't spend such high draft capital on them? You're a little bit more willing to drop those guys, and after seeing what they've done here in the first couple of weeks, or is that still falling under the wait and see approach?
Well, like I can attest to it a little bit. Like I got Peter Malcolm. I drafted him in the 8th round.
Yeah.
And Seattle's front pack looks awesome in these last 2 games, and he's putting up 3 and 4.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't want to say it's getting to the point of thin ice, but there's a guy for me. I mean, I just dropped Clive and Lobster. Like, I don't know. I feel like football has made me just tough on these guys, man. Like quick in, quick out. Like,
because it's a double-edged sword, right? It's like, okay, one way you can look at it is, okay, do I keep this guy because I'm worried that he may start to do something, and I don't want to get burnt by me dropping a guy when he starts to go off? But then there's also the other side of it, where if you hold a guy too long, you're just wasting a roster spot when you can use that guy to pick up another thing. Exactly, Ryber. That
yogurt.
That does sound, Holden Younger. Yeah, that sounds fun. But that is an interesting conversation, because I think, like we said earlier in the show, there are a lot of players that have been pretty shocking. I mean, AJ Alateam is obviously the first one that comes to mind, but just like, you really expected different things coming into this season, especially from a fantasy perspective, and it's something that is literally completely different. So it's been interesting to see that. All right, let's shift over here now to the round 3 fantasy MLR preview and prediction segment. We'll quickly run through these games, give who we think are going to be the winners, and talk about maybe some guys that you definitely start in these matchups. I guess we'll start off with the very first matchup of the week: the Dallas Jackals at home taking on the Seattle Seawolves. I think for me, I don't think we need to spend too much time on it. You start your Seawolves. You start every single Seawolf that you have.
Even Peter Malcolm?
That might be a little bit, but you might.
I got a yes and I got a no.
We'll see. That one's a, but
yes.
I think in terms of all of the guys that you may be confident in, you should have the utmost confidence heading in to this week with your Seattle Seawolves players. Dallas Jackals, I think it's the same thing with what we were saying before. You play the top guys. You probably would start Adrian Boyson. Probably.
You're facing the Seawolves now.
That's true.
It ain't the Utah Warriors.
So are you benching? Are you benching Boyson? Are you benching Gala? Are you benching Naposki?
I'm not benching Gala.
Like Gala's not offensive dependent. I mean, frankly, the more defense he's playing, the more tackles he's going to make. So Boyson, that guy doesn't get around the field enough to start for me. I think he's going to be sat on the bench on my team. But yeah, that's a Seawolves team you're looking at. You're not looking at the Warriors. Seawolves are championship contenders over there.
All right, so I'm assuming Seawolves across the board here in our predictions.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on here. All right, Rugby Atlanta taking on NOLA Gold. This one should be an interesting one, an opportunity.
Fire up your NOLA Gold, baby.
NOLA to bounce back. Rugby Atlanta, I don't know if they've been impressing as much as they were expected to coming into this season, but I think this is an opportunity also for NOLA to come back in. This should be a relatively interesting matchup, I will say.
Yeah.
Any guys that you're really looking towards? I'm not necessarily very confident still in my NOLA players. You'll play your stud guys, but again, you're not going to be. I would shy away from Rodney Iona. I haven't seen much of him.
No.
Unless you don't have another option to go to.
Luke Campbell coming in hot this week.
Vandy.
Luke Campbell coming in hot.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Luke Campbell better be starting this week. Damian Stevens did not play well enough to get the start again this week. Please, NOLA Gold, figure it out. Damian Stevens looks like he doesn't know what's going on out there.
Yeah. It's going to be Damian Stevens, though.
Probably.
All right, and then looking at Rugby Atlanta, I mean, you're starting. I feel like
Rowita Biddle.
You're starting Rowita Biddle. You're starting Jason Dam. You're starting Johan Mumsen.
It'll be interesting. Let's see what that backline looks like. I hope they go back to what they did in the first game, but we'll see.
Yeah, it was interesting that Martini Talafusi wasn't starting in that matchup, so we'll see whether or not he gets slotted back in. And you move Rowita Biddle back to that center position.
What about Jack Shaw? You think he had a pretty good week 1?
Yeah, I mean, could definitely look. He looked like he was definitely involved in that offense. He definitely had chances with the ball as well.
Because I like the 80 minutes played, but I mean, I'm not huge on.
I think there's better guys on Atlanta.
And just remember, Vandy, I think that 80 minutes played searching for that has diminished, I think, significantly since the addition of the stats. I think compared to last.
But I feel like those back positions, that's how you get some good meters gained too.
That's true. That's fair enough. I mean, it does correlate. You're on the field more. You definitely have an opportunity to
Because
just
it's
score more
like,
fantasy
all you
points
need
here.
is
That's
that
true.
break, that
That's true.
quick break.
Fair
Yep.
enough. Fair enough. All right. Who are we going here in terms of the victors of the Rugby at NOLA Gold game?
I'm
Matt, I'll
going
start with
Nola.
you.
I'm going Nola.
I'm going Nola.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna go Rugby Atlanta here.
Rattle,
So
baby.
2-1 there. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. All right. Chicago Hounds, Utah Warriors now moving
Hey.
out. Chicago with their home opener. Utah Warriors there coming to town to experience the first Chicago side. Let's just talk about guys overall that you are looking in this matchup. Obviously, Chicago is coming off of a bye.
Yeah, I mean,
Despite being obviously losing in that first matchup against Old Glory DC, they still were able to put up, I believe it was like 27 points in that first matchup. So I think you're still
Yeah.
playing.
They're
You're
gonna
still
slaughter our
confident.
defense.
You're still, yeah, and that's a good point. So you're playing Mark O'Keefe, you're playing Bryce Campbell. I would be confident in Luke Carty. I'd be confident in JP Eloff. Matt, I think the big question here is what happens at that hooker position. Does Hugh Roach go back in? Because obviously there was high draft
I think,
capital placed on him. So.
I think Hugh Roach, I said this on last year. I think Hugh Roach is going to end up starting this week. He looked good to finish off the game last week. I think the big person that we got to look out for is where is Julian Dominguez going to be fitting into that back line, and how does he impact that back line now that he's officially signed?
Yeah, absolutely. And then you look at that Utah side, I would be confident in my Utah guys because obviously the Chicago defense didn't look that great. Obviously, Old Glory put up a whole bunch of points against them. So I'm not getting, you're starting. Lasike, you're starting.
I mean, Lasike, you are starting
yeah,
every day.
are you kidding me?
I would go with Joe Mano too if you want him as well. Lance Williams is a big start there as well. Vandy, I'd be confident
hope you're
with
right.
Joel Hodgson as well. So it should be.
I ride or die on him, brher.
Yeah, no,
Oh, yeah.
you're all. I love it though. You're all bought into your Utah Warriors guys. So let's
two.
talk about the predictions here. I'll go first because I had to make this prediction on the Road to Glory
Utah.
podcast
Fine.
released yesterday. I went with Utah Warriors, Vandy, and a little bit of an homage to you. I think I mentioned on the show it did seem that the Chicago Hounds were on vacation on their bye week instead of prepping, which is kind of weird to go on your second week into the season. I don't know how much you actually put weight into that, to be honest, but that was enough for me to sway to the Utah Warriors side. But what about you guys, Matt? I'll start with you because I know what Vandy's picking.
Yeah, I mean, Vandy's are obviously choosing the San Diego Legion, but I'm choosing the Chicago Hounds.
Okay. All right.
I'm choosing the Legion, you son of a...
all right. Utah Warriors for you, Vandy.
That's right, boy.
All right. A big matchup here, and I think personally for me, it's the matchup.
Andrew Cole game incoming.
These next two matchups I think could easily both be match of the week. But we'll start with New York Ironworkers taking on Old Glory DC in New York. I am so excited about this Old Glory DC team. What they showed in that opening matchup and the new players that they've brought in has been very exciting. I've been getting a lot of intel now being a part of that show, so there is a little bit more information now coming through. But yeah, Old Glory DC looks really, really good. New York though, not as confident in them as I thought I would be at this point of the season, being the former champions. Again, a good point was brought up that they have a new coach now. His first name is passing by me, but Semple. James Semple. Is his first name James? Can't remember. Semple.
Jimmy.
Semple, Coach Semple for New York. So that might have been a little bit of play, but I think for me, I think you're in store for a possibly very high scoring matchup here. And I think you're playing both your Ironworkers and your DC players. I'd be confident in both.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that's a good take there.
Yeah.
It'll be good to see the Old Glory DC guys back. See if it's not just, the first week riding on that high. Let's see how they look after this bye week.
How did Old Glory's front pack look?
Very good.
Oh, Sushan on my
good.
team looks good.
And a guy that I will say to look out for is I'm trying to put out here. I don't know if he's in our
Andy,
system.
you look out for Luataro Bavaro.
Yeah, you look out for Julian Bavaro there, Vandy. But the guy that I've heard looks absolutely massive as a front rower, Ramiro Herrera. He's an absolute tank, and there is speculation that he's going to be starting this weekend. So a little bit of a fun nugget if you want a guy that possibly could be
is
making
he available?
a big impact for Old Glory DC. I believe he is. He's not coming up on our.
There he is.
There he is. Yeah, Ramiro Herrera. He's right there. Hasn't played any matches yet. I don't think he's picked up. I believe he's a free agent, right? Let me see. Is he?
I don't know. The filter's not working.
Yeah.
But
Nonetheless, if he is available, he's a guy that you could be a sneaky pickup as a front rower, for sure. And then, yeah, let's just go predictions. I gotta go. I said Old Glory DC on the
Nice.
show the other day. No, I'm. Aside from that, I'm honestly very, very, very confident in this Old Glory DC side. That first matchup really made an impact on this.
yeah,
this.
Vandy.
Andrew Coe, 2-try
Yeah.
game incoming. I'm going
All right.
New
Yeah.
York.
All right.
I'm going New York.
All right, there we go. 2-1 there. All right, last match.
I'm not watching that one though. I'm not going to watch that.
Last matchup. That's the one you should have gone to because
No,
that was
I'm
gonna
not
be a whole
going to
lot more
watch
fun.
that one.
Houston Sabercats taking on the San Diego Legion in Houston. This one's gonna be another fun one. Two
Houston.
undefeated teams. It'll be cool to see.
I'm doing it for my boy Steven for Houston.
right.
Whatever. I'm looking to see Oxberger on his last game with scrum half eligibility. Say bye to the peeps. You're
Yeah.
going into the back three.
Why do you drop him, man? The guy's
I think
barely holding on anymore.
And I think
You
this
don't
is
even want
one
him.
kind of similar to the New York matchup that you're playing all the players in this one, right? It's going to be a tight matchup. I feel like it's going to be back and forth.
Yeah, you're
That's-
playing, but I mean, honestly, I think the Houston D is actually
Yeah, I think the Legion gets smoked in
the
this one.
Houston D looks pretty suffocating
saying it
there on
right
that,
now.
at least on the NOLA Gold team. So let's watch out for that. But it is going to be a crazy matchup.
Yeah.
The battle of the undefeated.
Battle
They
of
get
the
beat so bad they
undefeateds.
go get Joe Peterson back.
Oh, all right.
They drag him out of
No,
retirement.
dude, they
and then
do.
you'd start cheering for the Legion again.
I was
That's
actually
right.
thinking about that the other day. That they look damn good even without Joe Peterson. So I went with San Diego Legion here. So you guys are both going Houston. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
No, I'm going San Diego Legion.
Oh, for my boy Steven.
Oh, so you're
No,
you're
no,
just
I'm
saying
gonna
that
beat
'cause
Steven.
You're
I'm-
just saying
maybe
that
I'm
because he
beating
bought you a
Steven this
Utah
week.
Warriors jersey.
That's right.
But all right, we'll see how our prediction segment goes. I'll tally those up and we'll see how that all plays out. Vandy, you're now officially in our prediction segment portion. So every time you come back on the show here, we'll make
I'm
sure
saying
that
it
we
right
take
now.
our
I'll be
tally
here
down.
next week too.
Yeah, whatever.
That's
That's right.
confident. I don't know, man.
Whatever,
You're a
Vandy.
busy man now. You're
No,
making
I ain't nothing.
making lots of dough.
I'm
I don't know if
dropping
you have
out.
time for us anymore.
I'm dropping out.
Oh,
You're making fantasy Ruckers a full-time thing, right?
That's
Is that
right.
what I'm hearing? I don't
I'm
have the
coming
paycheck.
back
I don't have the
full-time.
I don't have the paycheck to pay you for that. But if you
Wait,
you're
you
willing
guys are
to-
getting paid for this?
absolutely not. But hey, nonetheless, it's going to be a super exciting week. I think there's going to be a whole lot of fun matchups. Again, we
Yep.
are super excited with how Fantasy MLR with the Fantasy Ruckers show has been
Dude, the
playing out for the
website.
first two. Website has been fantastic. Again, another shout out to Alistair Kirschpool.
That's
who's been
right.
So
and us,
pivotal.
Fanny. Don't forget. Thanks to us for the patience, Fanny.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
right.
And I've been patient as a mother.
That's funny. But all right. Yeah, if there's nothing else, man, again, this is round 3 is going to be super, super exciting. And
Coming in hot this week. 85
all of our-
points. I'm saying it right now.
That's probably not
Let's
enough
see.
to win, dude.
You might have to hear this music again.
Right.
We might be playing that next week again.
Buddy,
if
this
you
is-
don't put
this-
the 85 points.
This will be my theme song. You might as well just introduce me, fade me in the camera. Like as the show starts, I just come in and I'll be like, I'll have a tear going.
Yeah. That'll be every
Those
week.
are-
It'll be a
It's a
routine.
grown man tears.
It'll be grown man team.
Hey, I'm just,
But nonetheless, again, if you aren't already, make sure you're giving us a follow at the Fantasy Ruckers. Stay on top of all the latest that's happening in the Fantasy Ruckers League, whether or not we are able to expand this in the near future. Again, that's where it's going to be all be released. And yeah, if you enjoy this episode, make sure you give us a like. If you enjoy what we put out here on a weekly basis every single Wednesday with Fantasy MLR and our mission to our mission. Say it with me. Our mission of making fantasy rugby a reality in the MLR. It ain't the other people's mission. It's our mission.
that's right.
And we're going to make sure that we get that done. Give us a little subscription there down there below and maybe hit the notification bell too to get notified whenever we release those videos every single Wednesday. Guys, got anything else left to say?
Nope.
If I come last this year, I want to run a league of schmucks. And I'll just have a bunch of dudes who don't watch rugby, and it'll be called the League of Schmucks.
The call
All
for
right.
entry for people who don't know rugby. Come play fantasy.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, hey, for Matt Yee, for Devin Vandy Vanderpool Vandy, it was really good to have you on this episode, man. I'm Ryan Yee, and we'll be back next week.
I don't want your Yu-Gi-Oh cards.
You've been listening to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, covering everything rugby from the MLR and beyond. We hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review, and be sure to tell all your friends. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, connect with us on social media at the Fantasy Ruckers. Till next time, this is the Fantasy Ruckers Show, signing off.